So for our next one, this is the what I call the acetate window frame slider. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful, but I was trying to sort of explain a little bit what it's gonna do. Okay, so I've got my little circles cut out. Now these are 1 3/4 inch. Okay, I've got my little bit of acetate, which is 4 inches by 6 inches. Then I've got my photo mat, which is the bit that I'm going to cut the frame out of. This is the back bit, okay, and then I've got 2 flaps. So there's a few bits and pieces going on here. So let's start off by prepping our actual photo mat slider closure that we're going to be using. So this is the photo back, and as you can see, it's 5 1/4 by 6 3/4 inches, and then I've scored 1/2 inch on 2 long sides this time and 1 short side. So let's just add our tape to this. Okay, so this is going to be the back of our pocket, which is going to hold our photo. So it's just going to pop those round like so. Okay, and then, as I said, we've got the photo frame bit itself, which is 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. Okay, that's that piece there. And then we've got our 2 flaps, which are 7 inches by 4 inches, and I've scored 1/2 inch on the 4 inch side. So let's just pop these on like so. There we go. Okay, so we're just going to put the flaps and the slider mechanism to one side. So let's make our actual photo holder first. So where are my lovely scissors? So I'm going to cut as normal across on the to the where the score lines cross over, and then I'm going to give it a little wonky bit, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. And then we can just fold those over, give them a good burnish, make sure that that is straight. There we go. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. There we go. And we're just going to fold that bit over. That's it. All right, so that is going to be our back, and then the idea is that our frame will sit on there. Okay, now because I've got my 1/2 inch sides coming over, I need to make sure that I'm going to cut out 1/2 inch on the frame so that you don't see those black bits on the inside. Okay, so let's get in my mat, and I'm just going to, first of all, I'm just going to draw the 1/2 inch all the way round, so I get my where I get my cutting lines up to, and we're going to come in like so. There we go. We're just gonna I've got that lined up. There we are. And now the final side. Hold that in place. And I just want to check to make sure that the acetate that I've cut is going to fit nicely over there, which it does. So that's good. Okay, so now we've got that bit, let's cut this out, and I can use my pencil guides as to where to cut up as close to the edge as I can. So let's just, now I just want to double check something. Let's have a little look. Yeah, they are just going to come over the edge, so that's good. I think if you are worried, then you could come in at 5/8 of an inch rather than 1/2 an inch with your frame. Okay, in case you are worried about the fold over parts be poking through, I suppose you'd be safer doing it at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, but I'm living dangerously, everybody. Just going in at the 1/2 inch, like so, and then just our final piece coming in like that. Okay, so now I can poke that out and I can use that for something else. And then the idea is that this frame is now going to sit over those flaps, and that's going to work just fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get our acetate and we're going to put some red liner tape around it, and then we're going to stick that to the frame. So I'm just going to pop that on there. So I'm going to use slightly smaller or thinner red liner tape. I think this is 6mm, so I'm just literally coming to the edge, as close to that edge of the acetate as I can. Okay, I always use, oh goodness me, trying to see it through here, I always use red liner tape to fix my acetate down, mainly because if I was to use glue it could smear across it, and then yeah, then that's just going to put me in a real mess. So I'm just going to stick these down, and as I said, I'm going right as close to the edge as I can. Let's move those bits out of the way. There we go. And the last but one piece, I'm just going to stick that on, and it's going to give us a good seal for our window. And then we're going to come around and do the other side. Oops, it's a little bit fiddly. Trying to see where the edge is, and I think I'm just out a little bit on that. Let's just redo that, and that's just split, so let's cut that bit off and start again. There we go. Like I said, right, let's get you stuck down on that edge. I know I have got a little bit of leeway on here, but I just want to make sure that we get that good seal. Okay. Finally, there we go. So let me just take that away. So I've now got the frame acetate done. So we're going to bring our frame in, and I'm just going to stick this over the top, and you can see where the gaps, where the red liner tape is and where the edge of the black. So I have obviously got a little bit of wiggle room on that, but I wanted a nice secure fixing on there. So let's take this off, and I'm going to do little bunny ears so I can get it on as accurate as I can. There we go. I'll just give that a good crease down. Okay, and I'm just going to come up from the other side, give that a good crease, and then the final side. There we go. So like I said, I've got 4 like little, I don't know why they call them bunny ears, but there we are. Okay, so now I'm just going to make sure all those bits are sticking out, and I can line up my frame on the back there. Okay, I'm trying to get this as straight as possible. So stick down those bits, make sure we're nice and flat, and now I can remove the other pieces. There we go, 1, 2, 3, oh, and the 4th piece. Okay, and we're just going to give that a little burnish. There we go. Make sure that's got a good seal on it. Now, if you've got any smears and stuff like that on there, then now's a good time to grab a tissue and give it a quick clean. There we go. I've got a little tissue or a wet wipe or something like that, just to get any markings off or any static, anything that's clinging to it. Okay, and now I'm going to bring in my base, and we're going to get this glued on. Okay, so we're going to start with the bottom edge first. Now obviously I don't really want to put glue on here because I don't want the glue smearing on there, so I'm going to try and be as accurate as I can and get that side stuck down, and I don't think that's too bad a fit, and I'm just looking to see how that's going to lay on there. So this edge is okay. This side I can just see slightly that just a very small smidgen of the fold over on there. So before we close that down, I'm just going to trim off a little bit off there. So it's just good to double check. I am literally just a smidgen out. Okay, take that down. Now let's just double check that again. So let's just see, that's going to hide that. There we go, and then I've got that nice straight edge going on there. Okay, so let's give this inside another good clean, and now we're going to peel off our sides and stick this down, and this is our photo slider closure bit almost done. So I'm just laying that down gently on one side, and now I can come in and lay down the other side. Okay, don't worry if you've got a little bit of a gap, that's just going to make it easier for the photo to go in and out. Okay, we don't want it too tight, because we need to pop our photo in there. But there we go, I've got a couple of smidgy bits on there. There we are. All right, and that is our slider element bit done. So now we need to bring in our page, and we're going to add the flaps. So let's just give that a good burnish. Okay, oh, let's tuck that out of the way. All right, and these are going to sit either end of our page, so top and bottom. And because we're going to have a slider element going in, we need to make sure that we leave a bit of a gap, about 1/8 of an inch gap between the two when we come to stick these down. So I'm not leaving 1/8 of an inch of a gap from the bottom. I'm literally coming just off that edge on the top and the bottom, just so I've got that 1/8 of an inch gap down the middle. Okay, so we're just going to stick this down, and a little bit of glue. Okay, put that to one side, and literally I'm just making sure that I've got that centered on the page, like so. And then this one is coming in just a little bit. I could probably have come off that a little bit, but it's done. So I had a little bit of wiggle room, not a lot. And we're just going to do the top bit like so. And we're just going to put that on there. Okay, and now, because that's a bit bouncy, let's just get my clip just to hold that down. I'm just going to weight it down with something. There we go. And now I can make sure that I'm leaving a little bit of a gap, and I'm coming up as close to that edge as I can. There we go. All right, and I think we are fairly straight on that. Let's just give that a burnish. So I have come right up at the very top on that one. Okay, but I've still got my bit of a gap down the middle. All right, and then the idea is that the slider element is going to go on there, and then this will slide off the page, and then you open it up, and then you've got whatever you've got going on the inside. All right, so for this I've gone with circles, because I think the circles being rounded already, it will help with a transition as it goes through. Now 2 of these we need to fold in half. Okay, so I'm just going to do that. Let's just pinch that down, give that a really good burnish, and we're just going to do the same on the other side, like so. Let's just give that another burnish. Okay, and these are the bits that are going to help when we stick these on here, that are going to act as our slider bits. Okay, so these will tuck in either side. Okay, and then we have the other bit on the bottom. Okay, so basically you've got those two like that, sandwiched like that, then you've got this coming over the top, so you've got that little center straight bit in the middle, and that's the bit that's going to go through the gap. Okay, that is the plan. So let's let's try this. Okay, and we're just going to stick this down. If you don't have circles, you could try and do this with squares. Okay, and I would suggest if you're doing it with squares that you round off the corners, just so it helps with that. So that's one side stuck down. Okay, now these circles I've done at 1 3/4 inches. Okay, which I think is going to be substantially enough for the size of the slider that we're doing. Okay, so now this is going to go in, so we button that right up against that. Okay, so we've now got that going on with our 2 little fold bits, and now the final circle we're going to stick down on the top, so it covers up those 2 halves. So we're making like a slider sandwich. Okay, and that hopefully is going to be our mechanism that's going to work. So let's give it a little test run and see what happens. So this is before we stick our photo on there. So the idea is that this will slide in. You've got where those joins are there, and that will just slide in like so. So if I just lift this up to the top, you can see how the mechanism is working. You've got your big circle on the outside, the one, and then the two that are folded over. Where that is what is the bit that, where that fold is the bit that's coming up and down on our slider mechanism. And I'm so pleased that that has worked. Okay, so now I'm just going to stick that, put that in the center. Okay, I'm just going to clip down these flaps for the minute, because I need to center the circle bit, and then I can stick my photo mat slider on. All right, so let's just grab my ruler. So coming in from the edge of the flap there, that is 2 5/8, and this is 2 and almost 2 5/8. 1, 2 5/8, and 2 5/8. That is pretty spot on. Okay, and now what we're going to do is that this is going to glue onto that. Okay, and then that will act as our mechanism to slide backwards and forwards. Now what I will say is that do check the way that your page is going to open and close in your album. So my hinge is on this side, so I really want to have my opening on the outer edge, so that with the page is up like that, so you can get your photo in and out much easier than having it down the other end. But providing you've stuck this on straight, you could just turn the thing round if you've done it the wrong way. Okay, so what we need to do is that I'm just going to give myself measurements here. So I'm just coming off where the flap is there, and that is 1.5 inches. And let's just turn that round just to see. So it's not quite, it's coming off the edge of the paper actually. So 1.5 there, and that will sit there. Let's just see, I'm just getting a rough guide to see where the center point is. Off the edge of the page there is almost 1.5, so I might just need to smidge that up a bit. So while I've got that in situ, I'm just going to add a pencil line either side, just so I know where I've got to sandwich that between. Okay, and we've got our center point there. Right, so now while that is in situ, I'm going to add some red liner tape to that, because this is going to be a mechanism. I want to make sure it's not going anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to cut off a big bit of my red liner tape. Let's just move that up a little bit. I'm just going to put another strip down underneath. It's a real shame actually. I think manufacturers who make the red liner tape need to do it for us in circles, because it would work. Just putting it out there to the manufacturers that we are missing circles of red liner tape, which I think will work an absolute treat. Okay, so just got that on there like so, and now I'm just going to peel these off. Now some might say it might be easy just to stick this in the center at the back, but I just think I might end up not getting it on as accurately as I want. So loads of glue on there. Now I'm going to stand up for this bit. Here we go. And now I'm just going to center that in the middle of where the edge of the flaps are. I think I've got that fairly centered. Okay, and let's give that a good stick down. Right, and hopefully now, when I take these off, that slider mechanism is going to work, which it does. It's a little bit of wiggle room there, but that's absolutely fine. We don't want it too tight on there. But there we go. So that is that page done. It's just decorating is our next thing for that, but not now. We'll do all the decorating at the end. Okay, perfect. Now this next one is what I call the spinner pop-up with pockets, and it's a double page spread, but the only thing is that we can get it to a certain point, but we can't put the whole thing together until it actually goes into the album. Okay, so that's my my little template that I was messing around with. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our pockets on. Okay, and we're going to get everything prepped ready, so that we can, when we come to put it in, it won't take us too long to do what we need to do. So our pockets are 8 inches by 4.5, and again we've scored our 1/2 inch around 2 short sides, 1 long side. So let's just get our tape on here like so. Let me just where's the end? There you are. Right, okay, so we're just going to pop this on and get these prepped ready. Okay, like so. There we go, that's one done, and then we're going to get the other pocket done, and we'll get the pockets on our page ready, or our pages. And it's quite nice sometimes to have something that goes across two pages. It gives a real pop-up element, which is lovely to see in an album. Okay, and of course some of this stuff that we're doing in the album you could actually sort of make for like cards and that as well. So don't ever think that the two can't be mixed together, because they certainly can. Okay, but there we are. So that's our pockets, and these are going to go, so there's my 2-page spread, and these are going to go either side. Okay, so let's get these on. So I'm just going to cut the corners, so cutting to where the score lines cross, and give it a little wonky bit, and we're going to do the same on the other side. Okay, and then we're going to do that on this one. So cut to where the score lines cross and wonky, and the same again like so. Okay, and then we're going to just fold as we would normally do on our pockets. Get my little burnish tool out. Okay, and we'll just get these done. So that's one pocket, and we're going to do the other pocket. And like I said, we're just going to stick these straight on. Okay, so these are quite nice deep pockets to have on our pages. Okay, so one's going to sit that side, and then the other one's going to sit the other side, and then we've got our pop-up element in the middle. So let's get these on. So just going to take off the tape, add our bit of wiggle glue. That's it. I'm just going going to stick that down. And again, I'm coming in about 1/8 of an inch or thereabouts. Okay, like that. We're going to add our little bit of tape down the middle there, just to cover up that edge. Oh, I'm run out of tape. Let's get onto the other roll. Always good to have a backup. That's better. Right, okay. And now that's just going to on there. And now I can set this one down. Oh. Okay. And that can now come over. Like so. Make sure we've got nice straight edges. Give that a good burnish down. There we are. So that's one side done, and then the other side exactly the same. As I like to call it, rinse and repeat. Just going to come along. And again, that's just going to sit like so. There we go. Now we get our tape in there. So on the tape, I am just covering up the edge of that fold. So there we go. And now we can come down and stick this down. Okay, so there are our pockets done. All right, so now what we need to do, let's just move everything out of the way for a minute, is we need to make our little mechanism here that is basically going to fold up. These strips are going to stick either side of the fold, so that when you open up your page, we're going to have a little spinny card in the center of it that's going to go round and round. Okay, and to get a really, make sure we've got a really good bit of space for it to spin, we need to make sure that we stick these bits as close to the hinge area as we can, all bar about 1/8 of an inch, so you get the height, so that when you have your card, so imagine your card is halfway there, it's going to have clearance space to do its little spinny thing. Okay, that's a technical term, spinny thing. So I've not done any scoring on this because I just wanted to talk you through for this one. So let's just find my score thing. So for this, okay, the spinner frame is that we are going to score on one side of our thing. We're going to score at 1/2 inch. Okay, and then across the top here we're going to come at 5.5 inches. So because it's a 6-inch square, you just need to make sure that you're just doing it down one measurement. So basically you've got 1/2 inch either side. Okay, and then for the center point, because it is 3 inches, we're going to come well, 1/2 of 6 is 3, we're going to come down and do that center score there as well, even though some of this is going to get cut out, but it just gives us our accurate fold in the middle. Okay, and now what we need to do is just get our frame cut out. Okay, so let's get our cutting mat. I'm going to measure up. So where I've got my indentations from my score, I'm just going to flip it over so I've got the bumpy side. Now we need to give it a 1/2 inch frame, but obviously where we've got our 1/2 inch scores on these sides, we're going to need to come in at 1 inch. Okay, so I'm just going to line that up. And again, I'm just going to get my pencil, just going to draw that line down, turn it round. So we'll do the sides that have got the 1/2 inch already scored in. So as I said, we're coming in at 1 inch. Oops. There we go. Let's just line that up. Okay, and now the top and the bottom bit, we're coming in at 1/2 inch, and that will give us our 1/2 inch frame on the inside ready to cut out. Okay, where are we? There we are. I'm just going to cut that down. Perfect. So now I can just go ahead and cut this out. Okay, and I can use the pencil lines as my guide of where to go up to. Okay, turn that round. There we are. There we go. I'll just go in there, come down to that pencil score mark. Let's line there. And like so. And then we're going to come in on our final side. There we are. And I'm just going to cut that down like that. All right, okay, just pop those corners out. And if we turn it over, there we are. So we've got our little fold at the top, and like so, that gives us our little spinny holder. And then we've got our sides of our score line bits here that we're going to put our red liner tape on. So we're just getting everything ready so that when we come to put this in the album, that it's all set to go. So I'm just going to put that on there. There we go. And now I'm just going to come around and do the other side. Oh, I've lost the red liner tape edge again. Right, okay, I'm just going to pop that on there. And so that's all ready to go. We're just going to fold those bits up, back rather, because they're going to go back on themselves. So when we come to stick it in, okay, that's going to just hold down on there, and then we can do that. Or we could actually, or we could leave it and fold it. Actually, I'm thinking I'm going to leave it folding the other way. I'll tell you why. Because then we can, when we stick this down, okay, we'll put red liner tape on the underside as well, so it will stick down there, and then our paper can come over and glue down to that as well. That will secure it. So there we go. Let's just put, so we've got double on here. That's not going to hurt. Okay, we want to keep it in situ anyway. Right. Okay. So that will then glue onto our page. We can take that right up as close to the score line as possible. Okay, when we've got our hinges in situ, and then we'll have our little spinny bit going on. So let's talk about our little spinny. Okay, so we've got our little photo mats, which are 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, so you can fit your 3 by 4 inch photos on here. We've got some black cotton, and I'm just going to, now bearing in mind we need it to attach to either side, so I'm just going to give myself a little bit of an overlap, and I'm going to do two 2 lengths of that, possibly 3. Let's go with 3 lengths because we want it to keep fairly strong. Okay, so I'm just going to snip that. Now you could use embroidery thread, which might be a little bit stronger. Okay, but this is my just ordinary black cotton, and what we're going to do is we're going to stick it down in the center of one of our photo mats, and the easiest way to do that is to get a strip of red liner tape straight down the middle. Okay, like so, just so that is going to, let's just trim off that little bit at the top, peel that back a bit, there we go. Okay, all right, and I'm just going to make sure that I have got that centered. So we've got 3 1/4, so that's 1 5/8. I'll just put a tiny little pencil mark on there, and 1 5/8. Just going to make a mark on there so I can see that. Let's pull that back just a fraction so I can see that underneath, because we need this to be centered as best as we can. So 1 5/8, so just marking a little indent in there. Okay, so now I can take that red liner tape off. I'm going to get my 3 string, give myself plenty of overhang either side. I'm just going to stick that down so that's nice and straight on there. Okay, and now I'm going to get our glue, and we're just going to sandwich that between the two. So let's just add our glue to this bit. There we go, a little bit down the middle. Okay, and now I'm just going to sandwich this between the two. And there we go. And that is our twisty mechanism done. So that when you open up your page, it's just going to twist round. And then obviously you can put your photo, your pictures or your paper or whatever you want to do on there. And this will attach underneath. So let's turn this over. We're going to lie this in and we're going to center it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bit of black tape to come across there. Okay, the other alternative is that we could get a little strip of black card to come across as well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a little bit of black tape initially, just to hold it in situ while we just cut our black strips, just to cover that up and give it a little bit more strength. So I'm just making sure that that is centered. Right, okay, and we're just going to, oh. Right, let's just, okay, so that's gone on. Okay, and now I can do the same on the other side with just a little strip of black. Right, but this time I want to pull it quite taut on this side. Oh goodness me. Okay, and that has now pulled that taut. So as we fold that over, you can see that that is going to twist round. So let's just lay that flat, and then we're just going to get a couple of strips. Now I'm just going to use a bit of scrap card that I've got. We know that this is 1/2 inch, so I'm just going to come in at 3/8 inch, just so I don't have any overhangs showing. Okay, that's a little long, so let's just measure that. We just want to take it down to the edge there, so that is about, say, 4.5 inches. So let's just trim that off, and this is going to help keep that mechanism sturdy as well. Okay, so that's on there, so let's do that again. So that's 3/8 inch. Oops. By 4.5. 4.5. So let's move those bits out of the way. I'm just going to fold these in half, so I'll get it nice and even either side. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is this little bit of cotton that is here, I'm just going to tuck that in there. Let's just add a little bit of glue going down there. I'm just going to add that on there just to hold that in situ while we glue the other bits down. And the other one I'm going to do the opposite way, just so that that will sit and hold that in place, and it will tidy everything up as well. Oh, actually everything's sticking to my fingers. Let's just bring that over a little bit. There we go. I suppose I could have used black tape, but there we go. It's just to hold that down. Okay, and now I can get my glue on here, and we're just going to stick these in place, and then hopefully that will keep everything nice and firm. So that's going to come in down there. That's going to come in down there. It's covering up the cotton. Okay, so that's not going anywhere. Okay, and we've strengthened that edge, and then we're just going to do the same on the other side, like so. And again, that's just coming in the center and bringing that down and just holding that in place. Okay, and we'll just let that dry, but that is our little twisty bit that's going to twist round when you open up the page. Okay, and then so as I said, that we will put on when we've got the pages ready to go in. All right, so I'm just going to tuck that gently into that pocket just to hide that away so I don't lose it. And now we're ready to move on to the next one. So our next side is going to have a large horizontal pocket, and then we're going to have another pocket and a flap for this one. Okay, because I realised that when I was going through looking at all the lovely pages that we could do with a few more pocket ones. So here are my large pocket, my smaller pocket and my flap. So the large pocket is 8 inches by 5.5, and again I've scored the 1/2 inch on two short sides. So we're just going to add the tape and one long side. Okay, so this is a really large deep pocket, Okay, so great for like a holiday album or something like that, to put like maps and other bits and pieces in. Okay, and then the smaller pocket is 8 inches by 3.5, and again we've scored the 1/2 inch on the 2 short sides and 1 long side. And let's just get those prepped, and then we've got those done. Oops, let's just get the tape on here. Here we are. Right. Oops, like so. Okay, and then the flap. Now the flap is meant to be that small. Okay, and I'm going to corner round that. So let's just grab my corner rounder, because at the end of the day it's the flap. Oh, I thought I had something stuck in there. No, that's good. Right, okay, and I've got those bits done, and then we're just going to put our tape on there. Okay, and let's just grab my red liner tape for here. So this is a fairly straightforward pocket, nothing page, nothing too complicated. But it looks a little different from our bog standard pocket and flaps that we do. So there we go. Okay, all right, so first of all we're going to cut off our corners, but initially this pocket's going to sit on there like so. Then the smaller pocket is going to sit on the front, and then we've got the little flap that's going to now be centered in the middle and come down into the middle of our 2 pockets. A little bit different. Okay, so let's just get this corner cut off. So cut into the where the score lines cross, and then giving it a little wonky bit, and we're going to do the same on the smaller pocket. There we go, and cut like that. Okay, and if you notice that these pockets are the same width, so when we come to stick this on, we're going to stick it directly down on the bottom. Okay, so let's get these folded like so. And sometimes it's good to have like layered pockets on a pocket, because then you can tuck lots of little bits and pieces in, whether it's, you know, little memorabilia bits that you've picked up, or could be receipts or tags, anything like that. So I'm just going to, that's just going to sit just nicely down there. So let's get this one put on. And the thing is about album making, at the end of the day, it's all about pockets and flaps. With a few extra odd little bits and pieces thrown in for good measure. And I think once you can master how to do a pocket and a flap, then the world is your oyster. It's just how you decide to stick them down on your page. So I'm just coming in, again, about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to put my black tape on there. Like so. And now I can stick the sides up. Oops, come on tape. There we go. Oh, goodness me. Right. And now that can fold up. Just double checking I have stuck it on the right side, and I have put it going the right way up. That's why I always mark a T for top. Just to double check and make sure I've got it going the right way. Okay, and now we're onto our other pocket, like so. I'm just going to see how we're doing. Make sure that's nice and great. I've got a little bit of overhang on that corner. That's it. Right, okay, so now again, I'm going to take off the tape, and this is going to sit directly onto that edge of the larger pocket. Okay, so I'm just going to run our tape along there. Okay, and now I can go in and stick that down directly on top, making sure I've got it nice and straight against the edges on the other sides as well. Gonna add some tape. Okay. Let's turn that a little bit off. Right, there we are. And now I can do the sides. One, oh, and two. And let's just tuck those down and in. So that's our 2 pockets done. And I'm going to turn it upside down. Just give that a good burnish. There we are. And now we're going to add the flap. So the flap is going to sit central to where our, as you can see, where the pockets are. Okay. Now that is just coming just a fraction over there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit off and bring it up a bit so that this pocket or this flap sits on there, but I didn't really want to change the size of it. Let's have a little look. It's 5 inches by 5 by 4.5. See if I come down, that's just going to hold that in situ. I don't know, I think we could maybe just get away with that, and what I could do actually is put a little swivel hold in there just to hold that in place, and I think that's what we'll do. We'll do a little swivel die to go in there to hold that down rather than the magnets, because it is a little bit close to the edge. Let's just have a little look to see what it looks like. Does that look really silly? Do I need to extend that down a bit? I'm going to think about that for a minute. No, we'll go with the swivel. Right, we're going with the swivel, people. There we are. All right, so I'm just going to work out my center point. So just coming in from the edge of that page. Now, bearing in mind, I've got 1/2 inch to take off for the hinge. So in effect, that's 1.5 inches. That's way too much. Let's come in like so, and I think we are fairly centered there, so I'm just going to add a little pencil mark either side so I know where that's going to sit. Okay, so let's just get this one stuck down. Like I said, it's a little bit different not having a full pocket flap on there rather, but I think it just gives a page a little something different to look at. Okay, and we're just lining that up at the top. Actually, I need to come down 1/8 of an inch. Come down 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and there we go. Right, and that is that done. So this will have a little swivel to go on there to finish that one off. And I'll make sure I add that to the pattern. There we go. Right, okay, so there we are. So one big pocket, one smaller pocket, and a little flap just to add a bit of detail to that page. Finally done on that one.